What's up, everyone? Hey, up next on the podcast, we're going to have Keith Hanks. Keith is a firefighter from the Massachusetts area, has about 21 years of total time in. He started he started as a firefighter when he was 18 years old, born into the fire service due to family traditions and just all those things. But he has this just an amazing story of not dealing with some childhood trauma and some things that go on in his life at a younger age, and how those just compounded all the stresses that he dealt with as a first responder. So, hope you enjoy the episode. Make sure you share it. There's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of people that need to hear that episode with Keith. So make sure that you share that to anyone that's out there that you know that needs to hear it, and anything we can do to support, make sure you connect with us. But look forward to hearing it. Let me know what you think. It's a pretty deep episode, so see you soon. All right, group. I'm excited. This one is probably one of the first podcasts I did just without really getting to know someone over a little longer period of time. This guy right here and me are fortunate enough to be sharing a stage this September. And we've all just been connecting. And so this is where I kind of get to meet and introduce you all to Keith Hanks. He's up next on the Second Chance podcast, and he and I are speaking together in September at the Operation Yellow Tape conference in Chesterfield. And we've been connecting through some group texts and this, that, and the other. And I was like, hey, kind of connected. It's like, hey, we'd like to get to know each other. And ultimately, it just said it was better for us just to go ahead and get to know each other's story a little bit on the Second Chance podcast. So, man, I'm excited. We were talking earlier. You got into the public safety as a firefighter EMT when you were 18 years old, and your journey from there was as a 21-year career as a firefighter EMT to becoming a mental health advocate, author, and speaker. It's so inspiring, dude. Just having a little similar background as you, and excited to hear more about yours and all these accomplishments that you had. But can you tell us what sparked this transformation, and start back when that 18-year-old, what's that calling for you to get into the fire service and EMS?
Yeah, well, Jeff, honestly, it was family tradition for me. My family has been part of the fire service since about 1875, and they have military background, so I was kind of just born into it. It was an expectation that when I turned 18, like other members of my family, that I was gonna get on the fire truck, and so I did. And it was like, right into the frying pan, or dumping the frying pan into the fire, however it is, and it was bad stuff right from the get-go. And it was sort of like my trademark. I was like a black cloud, as they say. Some loved me, some hated me because of that, because there was a lot of bad stuff that came when I was around. So my whole career was filled with a lot of trauma. And, come 2015 or so, I was obviously showing some signs. There's a lot of filler in there between getting on in 96 and 2015. But in 2015, I finally found help that was appropriate and correct and culturally competent, and found out I had PTSD. And I was like, wow, I'm, almost 40 at this point, and I'm been dealing with a lot of this most of my life. This would have been good to know years ago, decades ago, beginning of my career, teenage years, whatever. And so I started talking about my own journey on social media. And it was really simple. It was I kind of came out about having it, and there wasn't a lot of people talking about, at least in the first responder world, talking about mental health and PTSD and trauma. And so that's kind of where everything sparked. It was where it began. It was, hey, I'm going to put a post up, and I'm going to be, completely transparent with those who follow me and start talking about trauma. And I did. And almost 10 years later, I still am in different avenues now.
You touched on a couple things, and you went from I'm on the job to now what I'm doing. But entering at 18, and we were kind of talking about this a little bit, but where are we on hot calls? So you got this black cloud, right? So what, are we talking hot calls? Are we talking personal life, home life? Where's a lot of this coming from?
I think it's everything. And honestly, in my book, I talk about all of it. And there was a lot on the job. Okay. And the job, obviously, it started when I was young at 18 years old. But there was already stuff. There was already, those giant trauma rocks in my backpack before I got on the job. I, had a very traumatic childhood. There was a lot of personal loss, a lot of abuse. And then when I got on the job, obviously I was seeing other people's losses, other people's tragedies, but mine were still happening. And so this sort of black cloud, this insidious thing just sort of followed me everywhere I went, and it took its toll. And I think at times because of it, it made the job less enjoyable. Probably made me perform subpar at times. And yeah, I mean, it came from all directions, and a lot of it was self-perpetuating in a way. So it was almost like there was stuff already happening, but the trauma was making it worse, and then it made other things happen which caused more traumas, and so it just kept spiraling and spiraling and spiraling until I kind of hit my breaking point in 2015, and it just didn't make sense that I was bipolar or schizo or whatever it was. And the more honest I became with doctors and therapists, they're like, hey, you got PTSD. This is a no-brainer. And then as time went on, it kind of became who I was. I realized that I wasn't going to be able to continue in the career this way, trying to heal with things still happening. And so in 2017 I retired after 21 years.
That's talk. Appreciate you sharing. Um, you're absolutely spot on. Yeah, I've got so many directions, like mind spinning here, but
I
just
have that effect on people.
no, like because you say so much, and it's such a powerful thing, man. Just to come out with kind of all of that at one time is like, I think I want to just tell you how much I appreciate that, because that's a load, right? That everybody carries, and to be able
Everyone.
to just lay it out there, and look, we worked in the similar jobs, and I know how much you hold on to that. Did you ever, when I wrote down, because I was kindly there, um, did you ever, prior to your 18th birthday, right, when you started on the job, did you ever find peace with whatever happened as a kid before you went into your job?
No, I never dealt with it. I blacked it all out as best I could. It was always there. But we're talking, when it happened, it was in the early 80s when I was a little kid, right? And so when I got on in 96, it was mid 90s, um, I saw a therapist here and there, um, but I always lied. It was always a waste of time to me. You know what I mean? So I get on the job and I already got this baggage, and a lot of things, definitely brought some of the subdued feelings forward through calls and emergencies, for sure. Particularly once I started working more in some inner cities with EMS, and seeing more like domestic violence and seeing more like rape victims and murders and things that are more, a little bit more with the human part of the job. Really kind of started getting my symptoms to go again.
Yeah, so like I haven't. I mean, I've told a lot of people, but I kind of grew up in a more of a little violent grandfather setting where the cops was at my house all the time, right?
Mm.
And so my grandfather, he would just do some anger stuff, like he threw hot coffee on me when I was a kid.
Mm.
I just remember the feeling of those burns, and I remember like an honor, my grandmother, like, if you say anything, you ain't gonna live with us no more,
Right.
It
Right.
scared you to that point. And then he would do um, just like crazy violent stuff. So up until my sixth grade year, my sixth grade year, I went down. I was going to see my grandmother. My grandfather was in a hospital, and I found my grandmother. She'd shot herself. And she laid laid the pistol on her chest, stomach, shot herself through the heart, and right, I found her, and everybody back then was like, "Oh, you're good." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I'm good." Right,
Yeah.
And dude, I'm telling you, I was thinking about this today because I didn't know this part about you, right? This is our first time we texted a few times, but we said we didn't get to know each other, right? So I was talking to someone, and it was kind of on my mind, and I was like, the first thing, like when they're interviewing you at the junior rescue squad, I remember us talking about, where you're gonna have to deal with dead bodies sometimes. People die when you're here, and I'm like, oh yeah, I found my grandmother dead. And it was like a qualification. He was like, oh,
Yeah.
you get what I'm saying? Like,
You had a hash mark.
yeah. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you've seen some things already. No, right? So it's like,
Yep.
um,
Yeah.
no one ever, at that point in time, no one ever thought to say, hold on, man, let's get this kid, let's just go, yeah, right. Because you
No.
put, and it was, especially when you're strong and you're like, I'm going to go fight the fires and I'm going to do all this stuff. People don't really question you because you're a little bit crazy, right? Because you want to go do
Gotta
that
be.
stuff to begin with. So people quit questioning some of the stuff like, oh, yeah, he's a tough kid or whatever. But I'm glad I'm serious because they teed me right up for what I was thinking about today.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I know. Unbeknownst to me, I was like, I was working, I just journal some thoughts and for like a little book, because I'm just trying to put some thoughts together. So
Yep.
and that's where it came up, and I was kind of challenging myself and going back and forth. And I was like, well, one of my first interview questions was, "Have you ever seen a dead body?" Right?
Yep.
uh, so then, like similar, I think we go down these, like you said, these are hot calls, and this is people. These are families at their absolute worst.
Yep.
And we don't, when you're at, you may be helping someone who's fell, or, these calls are simple, kid playing sports or whatever, but, a lot of your calls is a bad accident um, or fires. And, it is. So I don't, so and for clarity, where was you at, or which department or which area of the world are you
So I was all Massachusetts, north
in?
central Massachusetts, about a half hour outside of Worcester, about an hour from Boston. Everyone, when you ever say you're from Massachusetts, everyone always says you're from Boston, and I'm actually way outside of Boston. So, but yeah, I'm about an hour and a half from Boston, about a half hour from Worcester, and it was
Yeah.
a smaller rural area, not like a city that I worked on for fire departments at least. So small town. It was my family's fire department for the first 16 years. And I did another, many years, on another department, but I always worked private EMS in the bigger cities that were around us. And so there was always that mix. And honestly, like sometimes some of the worst calls were in the small town. There was definitely more bad calls in the cities because there was just more. But the small town really you kind of knew people, and
Yeah.
so that was sort of my old America's hometown kind of thing, podunk.
Yeah, similar. Franklin County was where I was at, and I grew up in rural. But we moved into the county seat was our town,
Mm.
and it was Rocky Mount. So the fastest or the hottest station rescue squad was there in Rocky Mount. So
Mm.
I was I went to work at the station that covered a lot of calls. We'd run on a weekend or like a Friday or Saturday night, we could easily run 16, 17 calls.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just hot. Like we stayed going in the fire department. The busiest fire department was there with us, and we covered a 4-lane highway. So
Yeah.
we
And that's a lot of movement. People don't think about what that actually is. I mean, they're not taking into account getting to these calls,
yeah,
how long you're at these calls. I mean, 16, 17 calls in 24 hours is a lot of movement.
yeah. It wasn't always that busy, but I remember. I think I ran 350 calls in 6 months when I was like 15 or 16 years old.
Mm.
That truck didn't leave a lot if I wasn't on it.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember counting them because it was like a little goal of mine. Once I got to there, I knew I could was within reach. I was just trying to get to
Mm.
3. So that's so your EMS days or your EMT side, you're in the bigger cities, but your fire department is kind of your volunteered. But did you guys, you're volunteer paid or something other? Is that how it works up north?
Yeah, I mean it's both. We do have some strictly volunteer, very few left up here, but there is a lot of on call. There's a lot of combination that has both on call members and staffed full time members. I did both. I did the on call and full time staffing. So I worked 24-hour shifts, and then I would be on call here and there and stuff like that. So it was a blend. In the beginning, I was strictly on call because I was younger, and but pretty much from the time I was 20, 21, I started doing shifts both at the firehouse and in the cities around us on the ambulance. So kind of learned how the world was very, very quickly.
Yeah, yeah. No, you're right there, man. All right, so just kind of walk me into mine was a little bit of investigation. They tried to wrap me in with some guy. I didn't do anything wrong, but
Mm.
so I just started putting a lot of additional stress on myself. We'd already drank and partied too much, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right, and that was just part of the job. And that's what you did when we stood in the parking garage after we'd get done and hang out or parking lots, and then it's just part of what we did. And just total like just implosion, just kind of. Then when that came along, it was like I started getting like I need to change, right? And I just
Mm.
didn't know how to change. I didn't know how to get in there. So I just wanted to kind of tee you up with like I told you I was going to share some of my stuff and like,
Yep. Yep.
but like letting you know like hey, this is my mo. And when I look back, because everything moved really really fast right around this time of just self destruction of a handful of months and I'm off the job. But when I go back to this and I go, this was my moment when things in my life really started moving to where if you don't change it, we are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Did you have? And mine was like 2007. I'd been on. I started in EMS in '89, right, and then I'm law enforcement, a bunch of other stuff by the time I'm around to this position. So what am I great? So that's all I'm rambling there. Did you have like a moment yourself?
I think we all do. I think sometimes you got to think about it. For me, it was when it wasn't the calls that was bothering me anymore. It was showing up to work and sort of being uh, underhanded in some ways. And for me, the sort of the final straw was like an administrative betrayal. And it was one of those things where the EMS organization I was working for was uh, I kept them in the loop as to what was going on. I was receiving treatment for PTSD, and I wanted them to know. This was all part of my whole mindset with advocating was be honest, be transparent, and they were good at first. We're talking 2016ish, and then there was a situation where I called out of a shift because I had a bad shift the day before. I yelled at a nurse or something like that, and they kind of turned the tables on me and started throwing my diagnosis at me, and they got like a lawyer involved. There was a whole bunch of stuff, and all the details don't matter, right? But it made me stop because I got really upset. I got violently upset. I was smashing things. I was throwing things at walls. I was really really mad, and I was like, this isn't even involving an emergency. This isn't even involving someone dying, me getting hurt, someone I know getting hurt. It's not. It's someone just being a dick. And that was that moment where I was like, you know something? I need to deal with this shit. I need to stop pussyfooting around this and I need to deal with it. And I'm not going to be able to do it while I'm being screwed with for trying to heal. And it was really in that moment, towards the end of 2016, that I was like, I think I need to start exiting stage right real soon and maybe start looking at something else. And it wasn't an easy transition. And it actually got really bad for a while because when I did leave the job, I was leaving my identity. something I was given in the form of a badge on a cold December night back in 1996. And I held on to that for so long and didn't ever try to explore who I was because of what I had been through in life, that when I left the job, I now faced a new dilemma. Who am I, and what is my purpose on this planet if I'm no longer doing CPR on dead babies and running in the burning buildings? And it was probably more terrifying than some of the other bad calls I did, trying to figure out who I was at 40, almost 40 at that point. I was just about 40. What do you do when you're about to enter a midlife crisis, right? Who am I? Because all of who I am is now all gone. And so I started exploring more about this whole talking about mental health stuff that no one really was at that point.
Yeah. No, like I am 100%. You're spot on with identity.
Yeah.
Like you're one of the few people that's ever said you're almost word for word exactly what I said. Because I was like, I don't know how to read a tape measure. I don't know how to do plumbing. I don't know, you know what I mean? I can't
Yeah.
work on small engines, but I can tell you what it takes to save someone's life. I can tell you what it's
Right.
like to be on a SWAT team. I can tell you what it's like, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I can do all these things. And, dude, I tell you, a step further for me was like it was a Rambo moment of I used to do all these things and now I can't do it anymore.
It really is. It's not to play this condition down, but it's almost like you're a runner in the Olympics and you go into a tragic accident and you lose your legs.
Yeah.
And it isn't a thing where you can get prosthetics either and run again. Like, what do you do if your whole life is something and then it's taken from you, or you remove it, or however it is, and it's gone, and you identified your whole life, especially us as men, because we're pretty simple minded and we buy into it a lot easier than I think women do, but especially as men, where we're if you're a type A guy and you're a big tough guy and you live and die by the badge and that's all you do, that's all you know yourself as, when that's gone, you're looking life right in the face right now. You got nothing. You have nothing to identify yourself. You have no way to carry your day anymore because it was all at the station or on the ambulance or in the dispatch, whatever it is. And, one of the things I always preach to people is it doesn't matter if you have PTSD. At some point, you're going to leave the job, or you're going to die, or you're going to get injured and you're not going to be able to do the job, or whatever it is. We're all going to leave this career at some point. You best know who you are by the time that day comes, and it may not be your choosing. So you have to start now in figuring out who you are, because you can still be whoever you are and still be great at this job. But at least when it's taken from you or it's removed, you're still you.
Yeah.
Right?
No. Dude, I'm telling you, like that. I've tried to explain that to people, and they look at me like I'm crazy. They're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
1992, in '92, I was headed to paramedic school, and I was like, "I'm going to paramedic school." My folks, my mom's boyfriend, who I call stunt dad, they never got married, but like. So he says, "Hey, run by." He worked in an auto parts shop. He was like, "Hey, run by. Just talk to." I can't remember the fellow's name. He was the owner of the auto parts shop, and the guy goes, "He goes, hey, I want to hire you to come here and work." I'm like, "I really don't want to deliver parts, right?" And he goes, "No, no, I want to teach you business." And he said, he goes, "There's a lot of money to be made." And he says, if you're interested, I'll teach you. Yeah, you'll drive a parts truck, but I'll teach you how to run a business.
Hmm.
Like, you know what, man? Thank you, but I want to go chasing sirens for a little bit.
Right?
And here I am, right? Years later, after my demise, I ended up 10 years in business and learning, and that's what I do now. I'm a business coach, and So it just like it went away and gave me my EMS and police career, and then it came back to me. But it when I how did you apply to any other jobs? Did you go work anywhere else, Keith?
So for a little bit, I worked. We have a hospital down the road from us, and I worked as a second shift custodian for a while. It was actually really nice. It was the weirdest thing because I mean, obviously, you work as a firefighter, you learn how to clean, right? That's kind of what we do in between running out the door and sleeping. And so I kind of took like a part-time job doing that, and it was good, but no one there. This was weird for me. This was the first time I ever worked any job where I wasn't with first responders somehow. When now, aside from the fire and EMS, I do like contract work. I do like construction here and there on the side, but it would be with firefighters, you know? So here I am working in a hospital with people who, basic entry level sort of positions, all custodians and housekeepers and stuff. And some of them have been homemakers, some of them have been IT people. But none of them are first responders. And I'm a go, go, go guy. Like you give me a task, I'm going to get it done as soon as I can, the best I can. And a lot of people who didn't have that same energy and combined with symptoms, that I was having because I was still on my healing journey, and still are. A lot of that stuff was very, very intense, and it's a different crowd. Outside the ER, at least in a hospital, especially with people who aren't in healthcare, they're different, and they don't expect sometimes the way we're very lively with our personality, I guess, to say it nicely. So that was an interesting, very short journey. I wasn't there very long.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't. I couldn't interview. Like I didn't. I couldn't get out of my own way. I was kicking the can. I couldn't. I couldn't interview. And I went for an interview, and the guy knew of me, and he chewed me out. And he sat down. He was like, "This is what you did at your old job. These are the things you can use that in business. Here are," he like drew this out for me. He's like, "Here are the places you should go apply because you can do this, this, and this. All right. So when they interview you, this is how I want you to answer the questions." And I was like, "Yes, sir." All right. And that's how I ended up. That guy, no one was. I didn't have no one around me at the time that could say, "Okay, yeah, you're all these things. This is how you can apply it to the outside world." Leadership, responsibility, right?
Right,
I
right,
didn't I didn't know how to apply because I was always doing something that involved public safety.
right.
Um, for
And we generalize what we do, I think. It's we put band-aids on people and we put fires out or we arrest people.
Yeah,
And it's not. There's a lot of other skills in there. But yeah, it was hard trying to find that, um, using what I could do like I was on the job, but no longer being on the job. I needed to use that core skill. And one of the things that sort of drove me to kind of to honestly to do public speaking, um, was that, the portion of being a training officer. I was always a training officer in the fire department, and I always enjoyed, sharing knowledge, and that was something that I could tie into something I could do now, and still, beyond just presenting to first responders, still be using something that I used to use from the job that was very fulfilling. That wasn't just it was part of my identity, but it wasn't my identity and it wasn't my purpose. It was part of it because of who I am and how much I like to help people. Teaching was just part of it. And so I kind of took that and I nurtured it and grew it into something that eventually got me to start speaking publicly about trauma and PTSD.
that I ended up after that little pep talk. I ended up working with some friends of mine, but they hired me off an application. I went to work selling trailers.
Hmm.
I worked for a local trailer company here, and like it was freaking amazing. We we built, like, once I realized that selling trailers was helping people get to where they was trying to go with all their shit,
Mm.
I could rationalize that in my head that that's what I was helping. And instead of selling people, I became a helper and a guide. As
Mm.
soon as I could rationalize, as soon as I got that right in my head, turns out trailers needed me, right? And I needed trailers. But I learned all my business, all my marketing, persuasion, sales, all these things dude. There's a point in time somebody asked me one time what I was, and I was like, I'm the world's only hostage rescue trailer salesman, right?
That's
Because
pretty
I don't
awesome.
know of anybody else that was trained in hostage rescue that was selling trailers,
No, that's a pretty
right?
good one to claim. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, but man, we ended up building I ended up helping contribute to the growth of this company. We went into a larger facility with full service, and then within within 10 years of me working there, we was employing 70 to 90 people at a factory
Mm.
in our hometown, where me and the owner that I worked with had grew up in our home county.
That's
So
crazy.
like, yeah, like, you know what I mean. So I felt like
Mm.
I really ultimately helped those years when I wasn't helping my county out in one way, I was able to go back and help in another. So it's like it's a
What better way to
weird,
bring it all together, though? You know what I mean? You're still helping people in your area and
yeah,
stuff. I mean, it's just the essential of being a first responder, right?
yeah. Everything I learned that everything with me, as long as I can always, if I approach it as I'm helping or I'm making a difference, then I can. But it's like I didn't want to go be a, I didn't want to go be a salesman. I was a greasy salesman. I'm not going to go try to, take people's money for something. And then once I realized what I was doing, and kind of was like, wait a minute, sales guys just help people get the stuff they need. They don't sell them anything.
It's true.
Um, so like you at least, dude, got to go be in an area that you're familiar with. I
Mm.
had no clue what I was doing, um, other than that little pep talk that fella gave me. You take your, or you go hospital. Where does like share some insights and lessons from your book? And that's what I want to hear about, is where does the book slide in here at? And then when talk about that book for me for a second, because that's a big thing that you're
Mm.
segueing into right now.
Yeah. So the book started back when I first got diagnosed with PTSD in 2015. I got told, "Hey, you really ought to write some stuff down," and I was like, "Yeah, I don't write. I don't do that," and I didn't. I hated writing. I didn't really read books. But I did journal entries, and these journal entries eventually turned into like vent sessions, and eventually they turned into chapters. Um, and so 9 years later, throughout 9 years, this book goes through about 4 or 5 different transformations to get to what I felt was really my vision initially when I decided, hey, I'm going to write a book. And I didn't want to just share a bunch of bad shit, which I did. There's a lot of bad shit in this book. It's a very hard read. However, a lot of people focus when there's a lot of big events. That's what they focus on. And what ends up getting those of us who have either had suicide attempts or who have actually succeeded, unfortunately, what gets us is the in-between times. It's the times that aren't paid attention to. And so when I started writing the final version of my book, the biggest thing I wanted to paint was the in-between picture. We all know what a bad call looks like. We all know from TV and YouTube and TikTok what dead bodies look like now. I mean, you got 9-year-olds watching dead bodies on YouTube now, and we all know that. People see that. We understand that first responders see that. What people don't always see is that first responder sitting with a gun to their head for 9 hours in between shifts in their house, or yelling at their wife or screaming at their kids because they have no idea which way is up, and they're just completely terrified 24/7. People don't always think about that stuff. They don't think about the cop who shows up the next to your window and you give him an attitude and he starts giving you an attitude, but he just came from a dead baby that was inside a tree. People don't think of these things. In this book, I tried to hit on all the downtime, which isn't downtime when you're like riddled with trauma. There really is no downtime when you're not on your healing portion of your journey. And that was really, after I looked at, like, I think it was the third or fourth version of this book, I was like, that isn't hitting what I want. And so when I did this one, I read it and I had some other people read it and they were like, damn, dude. And one of the people who read it was a wife of a first responder. And the biggest push for me to get this book to what it was her telling me, now I understand some of what he was going through for whatever it was, 10 or 15 years. And that was really my drive, because people didn't have that knowledge. My wife had no clue what I was going through. My family had no idea. My kids didn't deserve to be put through what they did, because we weren't talking about this. We weren't sharing what we are all going through in order to break down this stigma. And so I know I wanted to do that by sharing the not so glorious moments, the ugly truth behind trauma.
One thing, and I'm with you. Who you're in a family firehouse for the majority of this. First question is, when you're looking to go home and family and have that conversation, they're all firefighters. You can't. You tell me what that's like for you. What's home life like right now?
Home life now is great.
No. I'm talking during that time. Is
Oh,
everybody during this time? They're all, your family is all firefighters or
yeah.
in the public safety or EMS, right?
They were all fire service. Yeah.
So it's hard. Is it easy for you to go say, "Hey guys, I'm having a hard time," or is it's not? Yeah, because they're all like, "You better suck it up, Keith."
It was always suck it up. And I mean,
Yeah.
shit, I got looked down at when I got hurt at a fire. I took too much smoke one day. I had to get transported and I got looked down on it. So I knew, and I knew my family. I knew I couldn't talk to them about the job affecting me, or I mean, some of them were responsible for the things that happened to me when I was a kid. I certainly couldn't go to them about that, and so there was no going to my family. And when I did come out, I got disowned by my family. And it was another shot to the nuts when it happened. And it was sort of like, hey, I'm not looking to like give you an excuse for why I've been acting this way, but here's the reason why I've been acting this way. And I got shut out. And so going to my family back when I was in my heyday on the job was completely out of the question, because in my mind it would have had that same result. And a lot of people go through this. And I think there's a lot of generational trauma in first responder families who have, especially like generations, and military families and stuff like that. And I think so many just aren't accepting of this. And I think it's getting better these days. But back when, 90s, early 2000s, a lot of families weren't open to that discussion. And mine was one of them.
And your friends are all fire and EMS people.
All of them.
That's yeah. It's exactly yeah. All my friends were either cops, firemen, or EMS people. I had very few outside friends. So when I'm in total chaos, there's nobody to come along and say, "Hey, you're in total chaos." Because I was just like, right, I was right where
Yeah.
it was just I was the center of the chaos, and but the problem is everybody's used to chaos. Everybody's
Yep.
used to living recklessly and doing crazy things. And my now wife, she was kind of that person that came in and was like, "What you know? You know, you can't do
Same.
that."
No.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know, what you're doing is not what. No, that's not a problem. But it's not that my friends were being bad friends. That's just all we do. That's all
Yeah.
we. Because we didn't, and I preach that nowadays when my friends send their kids to me or people come talk to me about, hey, I want to do this, and I go, do it. And I said, it's one of the most filling jobs. You're gonna have a freaking blast. Be safe. Listen to the old guys. Don't mess around. But promise me that you will have friends outside of it,
Yeah.
that you will not try to hang out with your shift is every now and then, not every day.
Hmm.
And make sure whatever you do, you learn another trade that's something that you take a hobby, like something that you really enjoy. And it might be mowing
Yes.
yards or woodworking or whatever. I was like, those are the things that I didn't have that probably would have made my career years longer.
Absolutely. 100% would have. I think it's a handicap with a lot of us that we, and not, this isn't, there is no absolutes, right? So this isn't every person in the first responder role, but so many of us like just live and die by our job and feel like we can't, I don't know, hang out with a doctor or a dentist or a librarian or whatever, any other career field, or do something that has nothing to do with anything we do in the job, crafts or woodworking or teaching yoga or whatever it is. People think there has to be something directly related to the job. And I think it's very much a handicap. And you're right. I mean, people getting into that and finding more who they are, and things that they enjoy is just part of just wellness as a whole, body and mind. And it's definitely something that needs to get pushed, and people need to learn more about what is out there that they can do as a hobby. Because I don't know, I mean, I struggled with it for years before I discovered that I like hiking and woodworking and carpentry, like as just a hobby, not like a job.
Yeah, same. Like once I figured that out, I I took to certain things. Like yeah, just going and doing and learning and um, it was like, and I tell people they don't realize it. I'm like um, I didn't have a lot of exposure to outside stuff,
Yeah.
right? I just
Yeah.
um, even like we weren't big on our groups. We weren't big on working out, right? So
Mm.
I worked out more and finding fitness and all those things along the lines. And and kids came along at the right time for me as well, right? Um, so just learning how to be a dad and all that stuff kind of started occupying time. But I tell if and go back and I look at the guys that were married and went home and had those outside influences and went and did play golf with other business people, whatever. They had that they had that downtime that a lot of us didn't have. And I
Right.
look back at that now and say like that. I would definitely say that um, that was a detriment to me because everybody's used to chaos. Like I
Yeah.
said,
Addicted to chaos.
you're so I'm going to kind of skipping some of the messages I sent you, but I want to jump there at the bottom there. But your message, and it'll help tee up the rest of it. But your
Mm.
message emphasizes the importance of feeling pain in order to heal it. Um, and can you share a specific experience where you helped overcome, and then kind of um, kind of explain it to
Mm.
somebody that's needing this because you're hitting so many buttons tonight, man. So explain it so you can help me with it.
I am a button pusher, man.
That's
That's one
good.
part of it. It's not really a secret either. So the feeling at the heal it is a big deal. And so for years I did talk therapy, and I talked about a lot of the stuff I went through, but I talked about it. And I thought I was doing really good, and I was doing good. I was healing. Um, but then I had another what I deem my last suicide attempt in right before Christmas 2019. And while I was hospitalized, I sort of had this like finally had this moment where it was like, all right, what am I doing wrong? Like I shouldn't be at this point. And a lot of it was that I was getting it out, but I wasn't feeling anything. I wasn't feeling the power of what I had been through. I wasn't feeling even day to day emotions at that point. And one of the things we often do is we avoid the uncomfortable. And trauma is uncomfortable. Once you get through it and you're living your life, whether you've adapted your life because of the trauma or whatever it is, you're living your life, you avoid the trauma. You avoid the memories of it. You avoid the sensations, the feelings, the places, the people even. But the feelings are the big part. And it becomes something that when you sense it, when you feel it, you avoid it and you do something to get comfortable. So what do we do to get comfortable as first responders? We often drink or we drug. A lot of us, we have to get that moment to change. We don't want to feel that. So sometimes it goes the opposite way. Sometimes you end up causing problems. Sometimes you become an abuser. Sometimes you become violent, whatever it is. And we're avoiding this feeling. And when I realized that I wasn't feeling these things, when I started going to a different form of therapy and started doing more mindfulness and started reading stuff, on the Buddhist religion and all this point of views, I started realizing that as I was sort of pushing the feeling aside, I was actually creating more trauma because I was just avoiding a trauma and I was trying to become something that I couldn't be. And so I started feeling what was happening. I started to just embrace the moment of, hey, this is really uncomfortable, but it isn't happening right now. It's just a feeling. And so when you go through a life filled with trauma, you avoid emotions and feelings. You become a bit of a cyborg. And at, whatever that was at that point, over 40, I'm now in my 40s trying to figure out how to feel things. And as I did, I realized that a lot of this baggage was falling away on its own because I was embracing the feeling that went along with the trauma, and it was no longer uncomfortable. It wasn't detrimental to me anymore. It was just a feeling, and it was a past feeling. And so when I tell people, and I have it as sort of a slogan, I have it on shirts and stuff. When in order to heal it, you have to feel it. That's what I'm talking about. You have to feel your pain. You have to feel what you have gone through. Because if you just say it and you're like, oh, cool, I'm done, but you never actually felt it, it's okay to feel it. Uncomfortability is what causes change, which causes growth. And that's what it did for me by just going and just being like, hey, so that's what this is. This is what I feel when whatever ABC happens and then XYZ happens because of it. And so by feeling it, it has caused the healing journey to kind of go in a different direction. And it's been a great one. I've had more growth because of, sort of head on dealing with things and the feelings and emotions that come with it than I ever, I think, did in the same bracket of time with talk therapy.
I think public safety professionals are absolutely the best at hiding their problems behind everyone else's.
Mm-hmm.
I say that often a lot, and this is just another one of those great examples to where you're too busy talking about your, kind of debriefing your last calls. And so last calls really triggered a moment for you, we go debrief that last call, and so you're able to kind of tuck your feelings and your emotions through that call.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but you have and I guess that's where I'm kind of just like super proud of you, man, is the way you explained it is just recognizing it and acknowledging it, just facing it, being like, and having a conversation with it if you have to, but we're gonna feel some pain here, and one of us is leaving, and it's gonna be you.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's just the way that you kind of gave it to.
I think it's so it's in a lot of different therapies combine both. And a lot of once you kind of get to a certain point with therapy, um, not this isn't advice for anyone to stop therapy and start doing their own things, but once you get to a certain point with therapy, you're able to do a lot of things on your own. And any one of the biggest misnomers with healing with trauma and first responders that we always want that magic pill. We want that one shot, we're done, everything's better. And it doesn't work that way. I'm still dealing with I will deal with this for the rest of my life. I will always have to be conscious of what I'm doing and my feelings. It is what it is. There is no one shot deal. And once you get to a certain point with therapy, you realize that everything that's changing, all the healing you're doing that's happening, you're doing. A therapist doesn't fix you. Meds don't fix you. Don't stop going to either. Don't stop taking either. But we sell ourselves short, especially first responders. we don't realize that everything that's changing, all the healing that's happening is our doing. And once you embrace that, you realize that on your own, you can sit with this shit and you can stare it down. And eventually you can learn to love every part of it, because that's what you actually need to do, because it is part of you. And we always think that we just need to get rid of this. We need to like run this thing out of the room. And this thing is us. It's everything that we've all been through. And we need to embrace it and sit with it, because every time we run from it, it gets a little pissed, you know? And if we can embrace it and get and sit with that uncomfortability and realize that all we're feeling is ourselves, that's where the healing is. Because you realize the thing you were scared of was just you. It was you. And you were probably scared of something else. And when you embrace that and you sit with that and you do your own work and you can meditate, even if you don't want to meditate, you sit with these things and you get comfortable with them and you learn to heal from them. That's where the power is. That's where the careers don't need to end. The marriages don't need to end. You don't need to lose your kids. You don't need to, drink and drug. You don't need to end your life, because you can feel these things and learn that it's all just you. It's part of you.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really great way. You know, every firehouse should have a key thing. Every firehouse should have a someone who's having this conversation with those young guys, even the old guys. That's right. Everybody should um, really just work through that. Just ignite, just like you said, it's just who you are, man. And um, but I do think if you can help just surrounding yourself with a little bit of different environment
Mm-hmm.
much as you can. You don't have to be, because everybody's like, oh, you act like you don't want people to hang out. I'm like, man, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a point in time when that's too much.
Yeah.
Because they don't like your lifestyle is like mine. I did not have a lot of, I didn't have business friends back then. I didn't have, there were cops.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that 100%.
I was going to ask you before I go to kind of the next one, was there a point in time when you was a little kid and you're like, this fire thing, and you're like, you know what, I don't really want to do this. But you did it anyway, or
Oh, yeah.
did you?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. When it was even older than that. Like when I was a kid, I mean, I was always around the firehouse. It's just where I went.
Yeah.
But when I was a teenager, I wanted to be a chef. When I went into high school, I was actually going to go to one of the tech schools and go into culinary arts. And it wasn't told to me that I couldn't. But it was very much impressed upon me that the family would be very let down if I didn't join the fire
Yep.
service. And so I did it anyway.
So like you got your book, we're writing your book, and I don't know when that came out, but you're starting around
June.
this time of you become like this ambassador of mental health, and you become a mental health advocate. And how has your work in this field impacted your personal life, but also the life of others? And kind of tell me how the book intertwines in that.
It goes sort of all different directions, I guess, with how it's affected. I guess we'll start with like my personal life. It's taken its toll. It's also been a very good and positive learning experience. There was in the beginning, like this year, I've kind of dialed it back. So 2024, I've kind of pulled back. We've had a lot of family stuff happen, so I've had to be daddy and be there for my family. But for a while, I mean, I was going a lot of places. I had was working as director of a life coaching business out here, and that had me going all over the country. I was going to conferences, running vendor booths, and doing presentations and different things. And I was gone a lot. And beyond being gone, I write a lot now. For the last 3 years, I've been writing. I'm now up to 5 different publications I write for, and I run a website with a blog. So I'm always writing. So there's a lot of commitment with this, and it's for years, obviously, after leaving the job, I wasn't leaving home. I didn't have a job. I didn't have things to do. So I was always around. And my wife is a nurse. She's actually an overnight nurse. She swears by overnights. I swear to God, she's a vampire. But she comes from healthcare, and when I started doing this, we had just had a child, and we didn't know how to figure out, okay, so how's mommy going to work at night and try to sleep at some point during the day? And how's daddy going to do everything he's trying to do and potentially leave every 7 to 10 days for 3 to 4 days? You know what I mean? And so there's that end. But then through networking and just in seeing other presenters, because it wasn't always me presenting. I haven't presented dozens and dozens and dozens of times at conferences. I was seeing other people and hearing other people and meeting other people, and everyone's on their own spot on their journey, right? And someone may be further, quote unquote, behind in their healing than you, or further, quote unquote, ahead. But you learn things, and you learn what people are doing that's helping their life and their family's life. And a lot of that came back in really helpful ways for me and my family. Like, hey, I met so and so out in Florida, and they do this, and him and his wife do this, and we started taking some of those experiences, and that was sort of some of the good and the bad that came with a personal life. But it took a while before I realized, because I didn't do this. I didn't advocate to get a pat on the ass. I didn't care about that. But it took a little bit before people would reach out and be like, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. And it was very uncomfortable for me to be thanked for what I do. I mean, I used to get that crap at the firehouse, and most of the times it was the EMTs that did the job, not us. So it was uncomfortable. But one of the first times that I had spoken to someone, we had gone to a similar treatment center at one point, and we were in contact, and he had messaged me, and I talked to him. I sort of, I guess, talked him off the edge by just being how I am, I guess. He called me back, and he was like, hey, man, I want to let you know you saved my life that night. And up until that point, I was like, man, I don't even know if I'm making a difference. I don't think people give a shit about mental health right now, because at that point, COVID is started and everyone's panicked about masks and everything else. And this night, when I got that call and I was told that, I was like, well, I've changed one life, and that was all I needed. Because one of the things we get stuck on as first responders is that we think we have to save everyone. We're not going to. We're merely present for an outcome, good or bad. Are we actually saving lives? That could be argued. We're there for a moment, but we get it stuck in our head that we need to save everyone. And when I started doing the advocating, I kind of started going that way, where I felt like, oh, God, like no one's listening to what I'm doing. I'm not getting any likes on social media, blah, blah, blah. But that conversation brought it to light that, hey, one person is still here, and they're saying it's because of me. How many other people just haven't told you? You may never know. And that kind of fuels it. That's like, hey, I wanted that when I was in my dark spot, when I was whatever, trying to overdose or trying to shoot myself, whatever it was, whatever method it was over the years. All I wanted was someone to be trying to change all this, to be there. And so that's what kind of drives me forward, is just that, hey, I may never know it, but someone may be getting something out of what I'm saying or doing. And that's worth it. No matter how uncomfortable it makes me in the moment, it's worth it.
Yeah. I don't think you realize, when you look on the grand scheme of things, how many lives that you affected as a firefighter EMT. But I really pay a lot of attention to my relationships and people that come in and out of my life now. I'll tell you why. So in '07, I got arrested for DUI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trooper arrested me. he went on to do his thing. I went on to do mine. We kind of kept up with each other. I kept up with him. I didn't know him,
Hmm.
right? So he passes away like in 15, 16, 17, something like that, right? So around 17 is when I exit the trailer place and I go work in fitness with the intentions I want to open up my own gym someday. So COVID comes along, boom, boom, and end up opening my own gym. And this lady joined my gym the first day, right? Or first week or so that we're back open. She joins our gym, and she ends up working out with us. A couple years go by. We're doing fit body games, and the spouses are there to support their wives, right? And this guy comes up, and he's like, and it's this lady's husband. And Danny says, he goes, "Hey, I just want to tell you, man." And he told me about a difference that I had made in his life. And so we go sit down and we're celebrating. We're having some drinks. You know what the guy asked me? He goes, my dad used to be a trooper out in Franklin County. And I was like, really? What was his name? Who do you think it was?
Lo and behold.
Yeah, it was the freaking guy, right? And that's what I speak to. Is I speak to that power of that relationship. And even though I got derailed, what a difference I was able to go on and make in people's lives.
Damn straight, man.
So like when you think about, when you get deep in that, Keith, when you start really looking at those conversations, that one is so powerful to me, but I bet you've got hundreds of those that where until you really start paying attention to it and like, because with me, stuff like that used to go in one ear and out the other. The randomness of me helping someone, because that's what I do. That's my thing. You don't have to, like you don't have to pat me on the back.
Yeah.
Think about how many times, like what you're saying and the stuff that you're, because I'm telling you, I'm living proof of my story of what I just told you, that we help more people than you realize. And that guy just happened to come tell me. And me and him's connected, and I've told him all the story now. I waited for 2 years to tell him everything. But now we brought the story together, and I was like, I really want to tell more people, because that's some serious fate right there, dude.
It's God has a plan, no matter what you believe in. There is, I think there is a plan. I think there is maybe variance of that plan to a certain degree. But if you're meant to be in someone's life, if someone's meant to be in yours, if you're meant to coordinate on something, you will. Yeah. And I'm like that with someone that I do peer support with. We had kind of met, not really acknowledged each other in the initial beginning of both of us apparently having a breakdown in 2015 and getting help at the same place. Years go by, we end up starting a peer support group together. We just get connected. It happens, and you're right. Pay attention to those relationships, and because it's important. It brings it all together. It brings that purpose back around in a very meaningful way when you really think about that stuff with the relationships.
I'll have to figure out a way for me to get back to New Hampshire to speak to your peer support group. That would get me.
We do Zoom.
I'm trying to get back to New Hampshire, man. I enjoyed that.
New Hampshire's great, man. Come on up. I'm in a nice part. I'm in the southwestern part of it, so I'm not near Mount Washington though.
That's all right, man. It's so small. I don't think it'll take us a minute to get over there.
It's a few hours. Come on.
Yeah. Tell me this, and just for the folks, of all the things that you're still with our PTSD, you have to acknowledge it every day. Sometimes, like when I speak, I'm talking about winning the day, and sometimes with PTSD, you're focusing on winning the minute, like winning the next minute. But doing all your mental health work, writing your books, speaking, husband, father, all those things. Like, how do you find your balances, and what are some tips that you can give people that may be struggling with that, but still trying to fill all these things that they want to do? Like, what do you do to help keep everything in perspective for yourself?
You got to pace yourself, man. And It's that addiction to chaos, right?
Yeah.
You take on so much. You have so many roles, so many hats, right? And the biggest thing is self-care. And one of the hardest things for me was because I spent so long from such a young age being told when to do everything in the course of my day, including when to go to the bathroom and when to eat, that I didn't want to have a schedule. But I found I need to have a routine. And I need to set up boundaries. Like, hey, I don't look at emails after 6 p.m. I don't answer certain texts after what, things, simple things. Because I was just trying to always do it. I was always trying to go, and I was getting, in the last year or so, with all the different transitions we've had in the house, I was getting overwhelmed, and I was starting to go back to some old behavior with getting angry. And one of the things I realized, I need to set up like a routine, like this need to be done. These things don't get done after this point. This day you don't do anything but stuff for you. God forbid we do something for us, right? And that was really that's some of my biggest advice with people is you have to practice self-care, even if you're in the realm of always helping others, whatever that is, whatever shape that takes. You have to have time for you, because you'll pardon the term, but you'll go crazy. And you have to have the boundaries with that. You have to be able to be like, something, no, I'm not taking all the kids to this today. I did that the last 3 days. I need to sit today. I need to breathe. And it may only be for a little bit, but one of the biggest shortcomings, at least I had, and I know a lot of other first responders and pretty much anyone really has, is we don't take care of us as well. It's that whole oxygen in the airplane thing. We're all going to be with the people who die in a non-deadly situation because we're trying to get grandma her oxygen, right? But you have to put yours on. And it's not being selfish, it's practicing self-care. And that was one of the things that we had to really implement in this house. And thank God my wife is a really smart person, because and loyal, because she stuck with me through all this and puts up with my shit. She was the one who was like, hey, you got to back it down. You got to take some time. There's plenty of time to do all this, but you got to have some sort of routine. Even if you don't want to call it a schedule, you got to have a routine. So routines, boundaries, and self-care is how all this happens and how things get done. And at some point, sometimes with this journey, people think that once you start healing, that you're right as rain. They look at some advocates and they're like, oh, I want to be like that person because they don't go through shit anymore. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. So sometimes as you're doing this, as you're speaking or writing a book or whatever it is, you encounter things that you don't just stumble, you fall on your face. And so the journey begins again, and you have to pick yourself up. And so having these boundaries, having this self-care, having all this allows you to lick your wounds when those things come up. And it's super important. And a lesson I had to learn kind of the hard way, that others shouldn't, that you just got to take time for you, and you got to be patient.
I like the way you put that. Routines, boundaries. What was the last one?
Self-care.
Routine, boundaries, yes. RBS.
Uh,
We have a hard time with boundaries. I did. I had a hard time with boundaries and putting them in place and even respecting them. It was just something I struggled with. And but the Proline, the dealership gave me a good routine to work. So you're right.
hmm.
And then so once I got into like, I kind of I just stopped doing for others for a while and
Mm-hmm.
stopped just I just kind of just I had the ability to be like I don't want to go do that, or I'm not gonna put myself out there to go do something I really don't want to do. Right? So
It's okay to say no.
yeah, I learned how to say no a little bit. Do it way more now, just because. And people ask me like, "Why would you not do that?" I'm like, "Hey, sometimes it's about my mental health, right? It's just I don't have to operate in spaces that I'm going to thrive in." Um,
Yeah.
I think that's why it took me. So I haven't. I haven't really dabbled in any law enforcement things that I used to do. I wanted my kids to be older,
Mm,
and I wanted them to be older where they could understand. And then, because some of it gets deep. When you start talking about those powers of the power of God or that
mm.
that universal type thing, that plan for that help to be there. Sometimes it gets deep, and then I needed to make sure that I was ready to handle it. And life kind of kept nudging me in some areas where it helped me to where I knew it was kind of the right time.
Mm.
So yeah, so just kind of I did. I haven't I did business, man. I worked on business. I ran gyms, and then the more I was in my gym, the more a lot of my LE friends started coming around and working out, and then we just created some different conversations, and some good purpose stuff came up, right? So,
That's the other
um,
thing with when you advocate and you speak is I think a lot of people don't realize like how much extra healing you need to do, how much more extra self care, and um, again, for anyone who's out there who is or wants to be, an advocate, public speaking for mental health, you got to realize that when you go beyond just sharing textbook stuff, not flipping through the DSM and giving out diagnosis. When you start sharing personal stuff with this, it takes a lot out of you, and you have to stop and breathe for a little bit. You have to take some self care and take your space.
yeah, you're 100% with that. It is because I get emotional sometimes when I tell it, and I try and I have to back up, but then I'm kind of fighting that, keeping that guard up so you don't take it into that emotional space. There's a lot of, just you put a lot of protectors in. I do. I put a lot of protectors because I'm trying to, um, no matter, and I'm getting better, right? But I think there's still going to be little moments where it just triggers where I get a little fired up about it. And
Oh
um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, like, dude, I'm telling you, I didn't realize how close of that, how you made me, the closeness that I felt to your journey just because I feel like I was there, right?
Mm.
Of understanding exactly what you mean. And I'm glad you talked to me about it because not very many people do about your identity. And
Yeah.
that's what, and you framed it in a way, and I don't know whether I've ever said, hey, I lost my identity. I think I said I struggled to find who I was,
Right.
but I don't ever think I used the words I lost my identity. That's exactly what happened to me. I didn't, and you helped me kind of just relive that in my head of, I didn't know how to do. I could change tires. I did a little mechanic work, but I couldn't. You know what I mean? Like I was not that savvy around, so I was fortunate enough to find what I'm doing. I was going to ask you. Let's run down all the things you've got coming up. You're going to speak with me September. What are we? The 12th? No, 14th. September.
14th. I will be down there. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
September 14th, Operation Yellow Tape. You can go to kennymitchelljr.com. It's packed that day with just rock star speakers. You're there, I'm there. I know Kenny's going to be there, Johnny Savage. Um, there's a couple others that's in that group that I haven't put a name with yet that has just been, Kenny's kind of read me off the thing. So I know we got that. You got your book, Alan. Tell me, where can we find out?
Alan's out on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Is supposed to be out on Walmart and Target as well, all online. Um, and eventually, I've had a couple flash sales that I run through my website that are direct buys through the distributor. As time goes on, we'll be having more of that, and we are probably towards the end of the summer, maybe more into the fall. I'm going to record an audio version of the book. That seems to be a big thing. I like audiobooks. Listen to it while you're driving around, listen to it while you're working out, whatever it is. Um, and so, yeah, that's where you can find that. And eventually on my website, I'll probably down the road put up a permanent link to buy it directly from me.
And working on a second book.
Yeah. So the name of my LLC is Traumatic Strength, and it kind of comes from that feel it to heal it sort of perspective. And I went through a bunch of different names when I wrote Alan. I'm a big music guy. I listened to a lot of heavy metal and hard rock growing up. And so initially, one of my titles for my book was, can't remember it right now, but it's a Metallica song. And a lot of the chapters were whatever. But at one point I had decided I may call it traumatic strength. And then I was like, not yet. And so the follow up to Alan is going to be a traumatic strength. And it's going to be, there'll be some stories in it, but it's going to be more of a field guide. It's going to be more of a, hey, how do we unscrew our head out of our ass here once we get trauma, and what works, what doesn't work. And it's going to sort of be the same sort of chronological order, right? Like you got the birth of the trauma to like healing and longevity in either career, marriage, or life. And that's sort of how I'm structuring it. Probably be, like a 300-page book, something like that, maybe a little bit more, nothing major, but more of like something that like anyone could read, anyone can get anything out of it. But departments could definitely have it as sort of a book in the beginning, especially for like academies, recruits, and whatnot. Is sort of my goal. I mean, anyone could read any of these. You don't have to be a first responder to get something out of these books. And I think when it comes to resiliency and healing from trauma, I think all of us, all of society, could benefit from it.
Yeah, anything I can do to help support you. And I'll write you some kind words in the back. You can put some. I'll write you some kind words. You can
I
publish
like kind words.
Use some kind words. No,
Southern folks. I like
yeah,
kind.
I'll put you some Southern dialect in the back there so you can make
I
it
tell you,
in.
it's funny who you meet because, like, do you know Adam Davis?
No, not right off.
And so he's a speaker. He's law enforcement. He's from Alabama, and he's the one who helped me design the cover of Alan. He sort of helped me get through the whole self-publishing thing. And it's funny because people tend to tell me, especially if they're not from New England, that I have a very thick Boston accent, or at least New England accent. And him being from Alabama,
Yeah,
some of our conversations have been pretty funny. And that Southern drawl he's got is
yeah.
I always find it humorous.
Mine is mine doesn't. I'm unique to our area. When I'm travel, people think I'm from Alabama.
I can see
Uh,
it.
just to remember how I grew up enunciating my words, right? So I man, this is I got way more out of this than you did. I can just go and tell you, you've like-minded individuals got to connect tonight, and it means a lot to me that you
Same,
took time.
man.
It means a ton, dude, that you took some time because you're one of the few people that really helped me. I haven't talked to a lot of me's that grew up like that, where you ended up in something, that was all the time,
Yeah.
and that had similar struggles, but with just perspectives and trying to find some leftover childhood. My childhood stuff was a little violence, and
Mm.
some guys dealt with sexual traumas and stuff like that, and
Yep.
I've never stepped into anything remotely to that. Just a lot more violent stuff. So my heart always breaks for those guys, but. Dude, I'm telling you, I can't wait to meet you in person, and um, let's get the opportunity to speak together in September. And if there's by all means anything I can do to help support your missions and all those things, make sure you let us know. People can follow you. You're active on Instagram, right? KH or K Hanks MZ, right?
Correct. Yep. I'm on most of the socials, Instagram, Facebook. I run different groups on Facebook, LinkedIn.
And then make sure as you're listening to this episode, I know I can tell you from my experience, and I'm not going to speak for Keith, but I can tell you there's thousands of people that need to hear this message. And the
Mm.
more you all share this, the more that we can help reach those folks that are out there that just need to hear that there's life beyond whatever you're dealing with. There's more lives to help. There's more lives to change. And if you're in this situation, and this is speaking to you, and you know who they are, make sure that you get this information, get this podcast into their hands, and connect them with me or Keith, so we can just point them in the right direction, and just you tell them to follow me. They're gonna get positive content all the time. So, anything else, Keith, before we wrap up?
The only thing I want to share is that on my website, keithhanks.com, there is a resources tab. And it has, I think we're up over 250 different resources, both first responder and general society for mental wellness and mental health. And it's not just treatment centers, it's different modalities. And I have ones from all over the country, all over New England. There's a lot in there. And so, go to my website, check out the tab. You can find find help through websites and things, and phone numbers and contact names. So help is out there. You just gotta find a place that has them.
Yeah. Thank you, Keith Hanks. Appreciate you, brother. Glad I met you.
Thanks, Jeff.